Maya Johnson adjusted her black uniform and straightened her shoulders as she walked through the marble halls of the Whitmore estate. The grand mansion buzzed with activity as dozens of workers prepared for what everyone called the wedding of the century. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and fresh white roses filled every corner with their sweet fragrance. At 23, Maya had worked as a housekeeper for the wealthy Whitmore family for 2 years. She took pride in her work, even though some of the other staff members whispered behind her back. Being one of the few black employees in the prestigious household wasn't easy, but Maya kept her head high and focused on doing her job well. Today was different from any other day. Richard Whitmore, the billionaire tech tycoon, was finally marrying his longtime girlfriend, Victoria Sterling. The guest list included politicians, celebrities, and business leaders from around the world. Security guards in black suits patrolled the grounds, and expensive cars lined the circular driveway. Maya carried her cleaning supplies up the grand staircase, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. She had been assigned to prepare the master bedroom where Richard would get ready for the ceremony. The room was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the perfectly manicured gardens where white chairs sat in neat rows for the outdoor ceremony. As she dusted the antique furniture, Maya noticed Richard pacing back and forth near the window. He wore an expensive gray suit, but his face looked pale and worried. His hands shook slightly as he reached for a glass of water on the bedside table. "Excuse me, sir," Maya said softly. "Is everything all right?" Richard looked up, startled. His blue eyes were red-rimmed and beads of sweat dotted his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. "Oh, Maya. Yes, just wedding nerves, I suppose." Maya had seen Richard many times during her work, and she had never seen him look so distressed. He was usually confident and composed, the kind of man who commanded attention when he entered a room. Today he seemed like a completely different person. "Would you like me to bring you some fresh water, sir?" Maya offered. No. Victoria brought me some tea earlier." Very thoughtful of her. Richard gestured toward a delicate china cup sitting on the mahogany desk. The cup was painted with tiny blue flowers, and steam still rose from the amber liquid inside. Maya continued her cleaning, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Richard kept touching his stomach and wincing. His breathing seemed labored, and he sat down heavily in the leather chair near the fireplace. "Sir, you really don't look well," Maya said, setting down her dustcloth. "Maybe you should see a doctor." Richard waved his hand dismissively. "I'm fine. Just ate something that didn't agree with me, probably. Big day, you know. Lots of rich food at the rehearsal dinner last night." As Maya moved toward the desk to dust it, she noticed something odd about the teacup. There was a faint, bitter smell coming from it that didn't match the floral scent she would expect from tea. She had grown up helping her grandmother in her herb garden, and she recognized the metallic, acrid odor immediately. Her heart began to race, but she forced herself to remain calm. Without drawing attention to herself, Maya leaned closer to the cup. The smell was definitely wrong. Tea should smell earthy and comforting, not sharp and chemical-like. Richard groaned and doubled over, clutching his stomach. "I think I need to lie down for a moment," he gasped. Maya's mind raced. She remembered reading about poisoning cases in the mystery novels she loved, and Richard's symptoms matched exactly what she had read about certain types of toxic substances. The pale skin, the sweating, the stomach pain, and the confusion all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Someone was trying to poison Richard Whitmore on his wedding day. Maya glanced toward the door, wondering if she should call for help immediately. But what if she was wrong? What if she accused someone of attempted murder and it turned out Richard just had food poisoning? She could lose her job, and no one would believe a young black housekeeper over the wealthy white family and their friends. But if she was right, and she did nothing, Richard could die. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 11 o'clock. The wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin at 2 in the afternoon. That gave her just 3 hours to figure out what was happening and potentially save Richard's life. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She quietly moved toward the teacup, pretending to dust around it. When she was sure Richard wasn't looking, she carefully picked up the cup and examined it more closely. The liquid inside had an oily film on top that definitely didn't belong in tea. Her hands trembled as she set the cup back down. Someone in this house, someone Richard trusted enough to accept tea from, was trying to kill him, and Maya was the only person who had noticed. She looked at Richard, who was now leaning back in the chair with his eyes closed, his breathing shallow and uneven. Time was running out and she had to act fast. But first, she needed to figure out who had brought him the tea and why they wanted him dead. Maya took a deep breath and prepared herself for the most important investigation of her life. She had no training as a detective, no authority in this house, and no guarantee that anyone would listen to her. But she had sharp eyes, a quick mind, and the determination to do what was right. The fate of Richard Whitmore, and possibly many others, now rested in her hands. Maya's heart pounded as she watched Richard's condition worsen. She knew she had to act quickly, but she also needed proof before making any accusations. Taking a deep breath, she decided to start her investigation, while pretending to continue her cleaning duties. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm going to dust the hallway now," Maya said softly. "Please call if you need anything." Richard nodded weakly, his eyes still closed. Maya stepped into the hallway and immediately began thinking about who had access to Richard's room and who might want to harm him. The house was full of people today, but only certain individuals would be trusted enough to bring him tea personally. Maya made her way downstairs to the kitchen, where the catering staff was busy preparing the wedding feast. The large room smelled of roasted meats and fresh bread, and dozens of people moved around carrying trays and checking ovens. She spotted Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, directing traffic near the main prep station. "Mrs. Henderson," Maya approached carefully. "I was cleaning Mr. Whitmore's room and I noticed he seemed quite ill. Do you know if anyone brought him anything to eat or drink this morning?" Mrs. Henderson frowned, wiping her hands on her apron. "Ill on his wedding day? That's terrible. Let me think. I saw Miss Sterling go up there about an hour ago with a tea service. Said she wanted to calm his nerves before the ceremony." Maya's stomach dropped. Victoria Sterling, Richard's bride-to-be, had brought him the tea. But why would Victoria want to poison her own fiancé on their wedding day? It didn't make sense unless there was something Maya didn't know about their relationship. "Did Miss Sterling prepare the tea herself?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Oh no, dear. She asked me to prepare it special. Said Richard loved chamomile tea when he was nervous. I made it myself and gave it to her on the silver tray with the good china." Mrs. Henderson paused, looking worried. "Why, is something wrong with it?" Maya's mind raced. If Mrs. Henderson had prepared the tea and given it directly to Victoria, then either Mrs. Henderson was lying, or someone had tampered with the tea after it left the kitchen. She needed to find Victoria and observe her behavior without raising suspicion. "I'm sure it's fine," Maya said with a forced smile. "Mr. Whitmore probably just has wedding jitters. Where might I find Miss Sterling now?" "She's in the bridal suite getting her hair and makeup done. 3rd floor, east wing. But Maya, you really shouldn't bother her today. She's very particular about her preparations." Maya nodded and made her way toward the east wing. As she climbed the stairs, she thought about what she knew so far. Victoria had brought Richard the tea, but Mrs. Henderson had prepared it. Either Victoria had added something to it afterward, or someone else had intercepted the tray between the kitchen and Richard's room. The bridal suite was surrounded by activity. Hairstylists, makeup artists, and bridesmaids moved in and out of the room. Maya positioned herself in a nearby linen closet where she could observe without being noticed. Through the crack in the door, she could see Victoria sitting in front of a large mirror, while a stylist worked on her elaborate updo. Victoria looked absolutely stunning in her flowing white robe, her blonde hair being twisted into an elegant bun. But there was something in her expression that Maya found troubling. Instead of the joyful glow of a bride on her wedding day, Victoria's face was tense and calculating. She kept checking her watch and whispering urgently to someone on her phone. Maya strained to hear the conversation, but the noise from the styling team made it impossible. She watched as Victoria dismissed everyone from the room except for one bridesmaid, a tall woman with short dark hair who Maya didn't recognize. "Is it done?" Maya heard the dark-haired woman ask in a low voice. Victoria nodded, her reflection showing a cold smile that sent chills down Maya's spine. He should be feeling the effects by now. "In a few hours, this will all be over." Maya's blood ran cold. She had been right about the poisoning. But hearing Victoria's cold confirmation made it real in a terrifying way. Richard was going to die unless Maya could stop it, and she was probably the only person who suspected what was happening. The dark-haired woman continued. "Are you sure the dose was right? We can't have him dying too quickly. It needs to look natural, like a heart attack or something. Dr. Morrison assured me the timing would be perfect, Victoria replied, applying lipstick with steady hands. Slow acting but lethal. Richard will make it through the ceremony, maybe even the first dance. Then he'll collapse and everyone will think it was the stress and excitement of the day. By the time they get him to the hospital, it will be too late. Maya felt sick. Not only was Victoria planning to murder Richard, but she was going to let him go through with marrying her first. The cruelty of it was beyond anything Maya could have imagined. She needed to get help immediately. But who would believe her word against Victoria's? As Maya tried to think of her next move, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She pressed herself deeper into the linen closet as someone approached the bridal suite. Through the crack in the door, she saw a man in an expensive suit enter the room. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and an authoritative bearing. Dr. Morrison, Victoria said, standing to greet him. I was just telling Sarah that everything went according to plan. Maya's heart nearly stopped. Dr. Morrison was Richard's personal physician and longtime family friend. She had seen him around the house many times, and Richard trusted him completely. If the doctor was involved in the poisoning plot, then this conspiracy went much deeper than Maya had realized. Good, Dr. Morrison said, adjusting his tie. I've already spoken to the paramedics who will be on standby during the reception. They're my people, so they'll know to delay treatment just long enough. When Richard collapses, I'll pronounce it a cardiac event and make sure he doesn't survive the trip to the hospital. Maya covered her mouth to keep from gasping out loud. Not only were Victoria and Dr. Morrison planning to kill Richard, but they had corrupted the very people who were supposed to save lives. The conspiracy was bigger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. What about the will? Sarah asked quietly. Victoria smiled coldly. Once we're married, I inherit everything if he dies without children. $50 billion plus all the property and business holdings. Dr. Morrison gets his promised payment, and you get yours for helping me plan this perfectly. Maya realized she was witnessing the planning of one of the largest inheritance scams in history. Victoria was marrying Richard only to kill him and steal his fortune. And in just a few hours, unless Maya could stop it, Richard would be dead and Victoria would be one of the richest women in the world. The clock was ticking, and Maya knew she had to act fast. But how could a young housekeeper take down a conspiracy involving a doctor, a wealthy socialite, and who knows how many other powerful people? She needed a plan, and she needed help from someone who would believe her incredible story. Maya quietly slipped out of the linen closet and hurried down the hallway, her mind racing with the horrible truth she had just discovered. She needed to save Richard's life, but she also needed evidence that would convince someone in authority to take action against Victoria and Dr. Morrison. As she walked quickly through the mansion, Maya realized that simply telling someone about the conspiracy wouldn't be enough. Victoria was a respected socialite. Dr. Morrison was a trusted family physician, and Maya was just a housekeeper. Without solid proof, her accusations would be dismissed as the wild imagination of a young woman trying to cause trouble. Maya decided her first priority was to get help for Richard. She needed to find a way to counteract the poison or at least slow its effects until she could expose the plot. She remembered her grandmother's extensive knowledge of herbs and natural remedies, and she wondered if there might be something in the mansion's garden or kitchen that could help. She made her way to the library, where she knew Richard kept medical books and reference materials. The room was empty, with sunlight streaming through tall windows onto rows of leather-bound books. Maya quickly located the medical section and pulled out a toxicology reference book. Flipping through the pages frantically, Maya searched for information about slow-acting poisons that could cause the symptoms Richard was experiencing. She found a section on plant-based toxins, and her heart sank as she read about several substances that matched what she had observed. Most of them had no immediate antidote, but some could be slowed or neutralized with specific treatments. Maya photographed several pages with her phone, focusing on potential treatments and antidotes. She noticed that activated charcoal, if administered early enough, could help absorb certain toxins. There was also information about inducing vomiting and using specific herbs to support liver function. Armed with this knowledge, Maya hurried to the kitchen. She found a small container of activated charcoal tablets in the first aid station and grabbed a bottle of ipecac syrup from the medicine cabinet. She also gathered some milk thistle tea and ginger root from the herb storage area. But as Maya prepared to return to Richard's room, she realized she faced another problem. How could she convince Richard to take these remedies without revealing what she suspected? If she told him that Victoria was trying to poison him, he might not believe her. Worse, if Victoria found out that Maya suspected something, she might accelerate her plan or find a way to silence Maya permanently. Maya decided to approach the situation carefully. She would tell Richard that she had noticed he seemed ill and wanted to bring him some natural remedies that might help with his stomach problems. She could gauge his condition and gradually reveal more information based on his response. When Maya returned to Richard's room, she was alarmed to see that his condition had worsened significantly. He was lying on the bed now, his skin pale and clammy. His breathing was shallow and he seemed barely conscious. "Mr. Whitmore," Maya said softly, rushing to his side. "I brought you some things that might help you feel better." Richard's eyes fluttered open and he looked at her with confusion. "Maya, what time is it?" "I feel terrible. It's almost noon, sir. The wedding is in 2 hours." Maya helped him sit up slightly. "I think you might have food poisoning or something similar. I brought some activated charcoal tablets that can help absorb toxins in your system." Richard nodded weakly. "Anything? I can't feel like this during my wedding." Maya carefully gave Richard the activated charcoal tablets with some water, followed by a small amount of the ipecac syrup. She knew that making him vomit might help expel some of the poison from his system. While she waited for the treatments to take effect, Maya decided to take a calculated risk. "Mr. Whitmore, I need to ask you something important. The tea that Miss Sterling brought you this morning, do you remember exactly when you drank it?" Richard frowned, trying to focus through his illness. "About an hour ago, maybe. Victoria said it would calm my nerves. She's always very thoughtful about things like that." Maya's heart ached for Richard. He clearly loved Victoria and had no idea that the woman he was about to marry was trying to kill him. But she knew she had to tell him the truth even if it broke his heart. "Sir, I think there might have been something wrong with that tea," Maya said carefully. "I noticed an unusual smell coming from the cup, and your symptoms started right after you drank it." Richard stared at her, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. "What are you saying, Maya?" "I think someone put something in your tea to make you sick. Maybe even to—" Maya paused, then forced herself to continue. "Maybe to seriously harm you." The ipecac syrup began to work and Richard rushed to the bathroom. Maya stayed nearby, offering support while he was violently ill. As terrible as it was to watch, Maya hoped that expelling the contents of his stomach might save his life. When Richard returned to the bedroom, he looked slightly more alert, though still very weak. Maya helped him back to the bed and gave him some water to rinse his mouth. "Maya," Richard said slowly, "are you telling me that you think someone tried to poison me?" Maya took a deep breath. She had come too far to back down now. "Yes, sir. I overheard a conversation between Miss Sterling and Dr. Morrison. They're planning to kill you during the wedding reception and make it look like a heart attack. Miss Sterling wants to inherit your money." Richard's face went through a series of emotions: disbelief, anger, hurt, and finally a cold determination that Maya had never seen before. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" "This is a very serious accusation. I heard them talking about it myself, sir. Dr. Morrison even has corrupt paramedics standing by to make sure you don't survive the trip to the hospital. I have pictures of the medical information I found about the type of poison they're using." Maya showed Richard the photos on her phone, explaining what she had learned about the toxin and the treatment she had given him. Richard studied the information carefully, his business mind analyzing the evidence despite his physical weakness. "If what you're saying is true," Richard said finally, "then Victoria and Dr. Morrison have planned the perfect murder. But they made one mistake." "What's that, sir?" Richard looked at Maya with something that might have been admiration. "They didn't count on someone like you being observant enough to notice and brave enough to act. Maya, you may have just saved my life, but we're not out of danger yet. If Victoria realizes that I know about her plan, she might try something more direct." Maya felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. Richard believed her, which was the first step. But they still had to figure out how to stop Victoria and Dr. Morrison without putting themselves in more danger. The wedding was supposed to start in less than 2 hours and hundreds of guests were already arriving. "What should we do, sir?" Maya asked. Richard was quiet for a moment, thinking. "First, we need to make sure I survive whatever poison is still in my system. Then we need to gather evidence that will convince the police. And we need to do all of this without letting Victoria know that we're onto her plan." Maya nodded, understanding the enormous challenge they faced. They were about to take on powerful, dangerous people who had already shown they were willing to kill for money. But Maya had come too far to give up now, and Richard was counting on her to help him survive this nightmare. Richard sat on the edge of his bed looking stronger than he had an hour earlier, but still pale and shaken. The treatments Maya had given him seemed to be working, but they both knew he wasn't out of danger yet. Time was running short, and they needed a plan that would expose Victoria's deadly scheme without putting themselves at risk. "Maya, I need you to listen carefully," Richard said, his voice gaining strength. "We can't go to the police yet because Dr. Morrison has connections everywhere, and Victoria's family has influence that reaches into law enforcement. We need irrefutable evidence before we make any moves." Maya nodded, understanding the complexity of their situation. "What kind of evidence do we need, sir?" "We need to record them admitting to the plot. Audio or video evidence that can't be disputed, and we need to do it in a way that protects both of us." Richard stood up slowly, testing his balance. "I have an idea, but it's risky." Richard explained his plan to Maya. He would pretend that the poison was working as intended, acting increasingly ill as the day progressed. Meanwhile, Maya would plant a small recording device in the bridal suite where Victoria was likely to have conversations with her co-conspirators. Richard had several high-tech recording devices in his home office that could capture clear audio from across a room. "But sir, how will I get into the bridal suite without being noticed?" Maya asked. "There are people coming and going constantly. You're the housekeeping staff. You belong there more than anyone else. Tell them you need to do a final cleaning check or that you're delivering something special for the bride. People rarely question service workers when they're confident and act like they belong." Maya felt nervous about the plan, but she understood it was their best chance. Richard retrieved a tiny recording device from his office, no bigger than a button, along with a small receiver that would allow them to listen to conversations in real time. This device has a 12-hour battery and can pick up conversations from anywhere in a room, Richard explained, showing Maya how to activate it. "Hide it somewhere in the bridal suite where it won't be found but can capture clear audio. I'll monitor the conversations from here." Maya carefully tucked the device into her pocket and prepared to return to the third floor. But before she left, Richard grabbed her arm gently. "Maya, I want you to know how grateful I am for what you've done. You risked everything to save my life, and I won't forget that. But I also want you to be careful. If Victoria suspects that we know about her plan, she might try to hurt you too." Maya felt a mix of fear and determination. "I'll be careful, sir. But we have to stop her before she hurts you or anyone else." Maya made her way back to the bridal suite, carrying a small basket of fresh towels as her cover story. The hallway was busy with wedding preparations, and she blended in easily with the other staff members moving through the mansion. When she reached the bridal suite, Maya knocked softly and entered. Victoria was standing near the window in her wedding dress, which was absolutely stunning. The ivory silk gown was covered in delicate lace and tiny pearls, and a long veil cascaded down her back. She looked like a fairy tale princess, but Maya now knew the dark truth beneath the beautiful exterior. "Oh, excuse me, Miss Sterling," Maya said politely. "I just wanted to make sure you had fresh towels and check if you needed anything else before the ceremony." Victoria barely glanced at her. "Fine, just make it quick. I don't want any interruptions." Maya moved around the room efficiently, replacing towels and straightening already perfect surfaces. While Victoria was distracted by her phone, Maya carefully placed the recording device inside a decorative flower arrangement on the dresser. The small device was completely hidden among the white roses and baby's breath. As Maya prepared to leave, Dr. Morrison entered the room with Sarah, the dark-haired woman who had been helping Victoria earlier. Maya continued her cleaning routine, hoping they wouldn't notice her presence or would assume she couldn't hear their conversation. "How is our groom feeling?" Dr. Morrison asked with fake concern. Victoria smiled coldly. "According to the staff, he's been quite ill all morning." "Exactly as planned. He should be weak enough by now that the stress of the ceremony will accelerate the poison's effects." Maya's hands trembled slightly as she dusted a lamp, but she forced herself to remain calm and continue working. Sarah looked worried. "Are you sure he'll make it through the ceremony? What if he collapses before you're officially married?" "He won't," Dr. Morrison assured her. "I calculated the dose precisely. He'll be able to stand and say his vows, but his system will be so compromised that any additional stress will trigger the final phase. The reception should provide the perfect opportunity. Maya felt sick listening to them discuss Richard's death so casually, as if they were planning a business meeting instead of murder. She finished her work and quietly left the room, hoping they hadn't noticed anything suspicious about her behavior. When Maya returned to Richard's room, she found him sitting at his desk with the receiver, already listening to the conversations from the bridal suite. His face was grim, but there was also a spark of hope in his eyes. "Did you hear all of that?" Maya whispered. "Every word," Richard confirmed, "and it's all being recorded automatically. This device will give us exactly the evidence we need to put them all in prison." Over the next hour, Maya and Richard listened as Victoria, Dr. Morrison, and Sarah continued to discuss their plan in detail. They talked about how they had been planning the murder for months, how Dr. Morrison had chosen a rare plant toxin that would be nearly impossible to detect in a standard autopsy, and how Victoria planned to play the grieving widow while enjoying her newfound wealth. "There's something else." Victoria's voice came through the receiver. "I've been thinking about that housekeeper who was in Richard's room earlier. The black girl, Maya something. She seemed very interested in his condition. Do you think she suspects anything?" Maya's blood ran cold. They were talking about her. Dr. Morrison's voice was dismissive. "She's just a servant. Even if she noticed something, who would believe her? Besides, after tonight, it won't matter what she thinks she knows." The implication in his words was terrifying. Maya realized that Victoria and Dr. Morrison weren't just planning to kill Richard, they were prepared to eliminate anyone who might pose a threat to their plan. Richard saw the fear in Maya's eyes and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're going to stop them, Maya. We have enough evidence now to expose everything, but we need to be smart about how we do it." "What's our next move?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Richard looked at his watch. "The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. I'm going to have to go through with it to maintain the illusion, but I'll make sure we have backup plans in place. I'm going to call my head of security and my lawyer, people I trust completely who aren't connected to Dr. Morrison." Maya watched as Richard made several quiet phone calls, explaining the situation to people he trusted. She could only hear his side of the conversations, but it was clear that he was putting protective measures in place. "My security team is going to quietly position themselves around the reception area," Richard explained after finishing his calls. "And my lawyer is contacting federal authorities who can't be influenced by Dr. Morrison's connections. But Maya, I need you to stay close to me during the reception. If anything goes wrong, you might be the only person who can get help quickly." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. In just a few hours, she had gone from being a simple housekeeper to being the key witness in a murder conspiracy involving some of the most powerful people she had ever met. As they prepared for the final phase of their plan, Maya couldn't help but think about how much her life had changed in a single day. She had always believed in doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. Now she was about to find out just how difficult doing the right thing could be. The wedding ceremony began exactly on schedule at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Maya positioned herself among the other staff members at the back of the garden, where she could observe everything while remaining inconspicuous. The scene was breathtakingly beautiful, with hundreds of white chairs arranged in perfect rows facing an elaborate altar, decorated with cascading flowers. Richard walked slowly down the aisle, and Maya could see that he was using every ounce of his remaining strength to appear normal. His face was still pale, but he had managed to compose himself enough to fool the assembled guests. Only Maya could detect the slight tremor in his hands and the careful way he moved to conserve his energy. Victoria glided down the aisle in her stunning gown, smiling radiantly at the guests and cameras. To everyone watching, she looked like the perfect bride, glowing with happiness on her special day. Maya felt disgusted knowing the truth about the woman who was putting on such a convincing performance. Dr. Morrison sat in the front row with other family friends, playing his role as the concerned family physician. Several times during the ceremony, Maya saw him watching Richard carefully as if monitoring the progression of the poison. The sight made her stomach turn. The officiant began the traditional wedding vows, and Maya listened with growing tension as Richard and Victoria promised to love and cherish each other through sickness and health, for richer and poorer, until death do them part. The irony of Victoria making those vows while actively planning Richard's death was almost too much to bear. Maya's earpiece, connected to the recording device in the bridal suite, had been quiet during the ceremony. But as the couple exchanged rings, she heard Sarah's voice speaking to someone on the phone in the now empty bridal suite. "Yes, the ceremony is almost over. Dr. Morrison says the timeline is perfect." Richard is clearly struggling but managing to hold it together. The reception should be when everything comes to a head. Maya glanced around and spotted several of Richard's security team members positioned strategically around the garden. They looked like regular guests, but Maya could tell they were alert and ready to act. Richard had kept his word about putting protective measures in place. The ceremony concluded with Richard and Victoria's kiss, as newly married husband and wife. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers, and Maya watched as Richard summoned the strength to smile and wave at their guests. Victoria clung to his arm possessively, playing the role of the devoted new wife. As the guests moved toward the reception area, Maya saw Dr. Morrison approach the newlyweds. He spoke quietly to Richard, ostensibly offering congratulations but actually checking on his condition. Maya couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see Richard nodding and responding appropriately, while Victoria watched with barely concealed anticipation. The reception was held in a massive white tent on the mansion's lawn. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and round tables covered in white linens were arranged around a polished dance floor. A full orchestra played classical music while guests enjoyed cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Maya moved through the reception area, serving drinks and clearing tables while keeping a close eye on Richard and Victoria. The bride and groom sat at the head table, greeting well-wishers and posing for photographs. To everyone watching, they seemed like the perfect couple celebrating the happiest day of their lives. But Maya could see that Richard was declining rapidly. His responses to guests were becoming slower, and he was gripping the edge of the table to steady himself. Victoria noticed his condition too, and Maya saw her exchange meaningful glances with Dr. Morrison across the room. Around 8 o'clock, the orchestra began playing the wedding waltz, and Richard and Victoria took the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. Maya held her breath as she watched Richard gather his strength for what might be his final performance. He managed to guide Victoria gracefully around the dance floor, but Maya could see the enormous effort it was costing him. As the dance ended, Richard swayed slightly, and Dr. Morrison immediately moved toward the couple. "Richard, you look a bit pale. Perhaps you should sit down for a moment," he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "I'm fine," Richard replied, but his voice was weak, just overwhelmed by the emotion of the day. Maya positioned herself near the head table as guests returned to their seats for dinner. She could hear Victoria and Dr. Morrison speaking in low voices while Richard sat quietly, trying to conserve his energy. "How much longer?" Victoria whispered to the doctor. "Not long now. His pulse is irregular and his breathing is becoming labored. The next phase should begin any moment." Maya's earpiece crackled with activity from the bridal suite. Sarah was talking to someone else, coordinating the next part of their plan. "The ambulance crew is standing by just outside the gates. Dr. Morrison will signal them when it's time. Make sure all the real paramedics in the area are diverted to the fake emergency calls we set up." Maya realized that Victoria and Dr. Morrison had planned every detail of their scheme, including preventing legitimate medical help from reaching Richard. The corruption was even deeper than she had imagined. As the dinner service began, Maya saw Richard push his food around on his plate without eating. He was clearly having difficulty swallowing, and beads of sweat were forming on his forehead despite the cool evening air. Several guests commented on his appearance, but Victoria smoothly explained that he was just tired from the excitement and stress of planning such a large wedding. Around 9:30, as the dancing resumed after dinner, Richard suddenly doubled over in his chair, clutching his chest. Victoria immediately jumped to her feet, screaming for help in a performance worthy of an Academy Award. "Someone help. Richard is having a heart attack," she cried, her voice carrying across the tent. Dr. Morrison rushed to Richard's side, appearing to check his vital signs while actually doing nothing to help. "Everyone stay back. Give him room to breathe," he shouted, taking control of the situation. Maya watched in horror as Richard collapsed onto the floor, his body convulsing slightly. The guests panicked and chaos erupted in the reception tent. Victoria knelt beside her new husband, sobbing dramatically while Dr. Morrison pretended to perform CPR. "I'm calling for an ambulance," Dr. Morrison announced, pulling out his phone to contact his corrupt paramedics. This was the moment Maya had been preparing for all day. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, knowing that what she did next would determine whether Richard lived or died. "Stop," Maya shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "That man is not trying to save Mr. Whitmore.
He's trying to kill him."
The entire tent fell silent and hundreds of pairs of eyes turned to stare at Maya. Victoria's face went white with shock and rage, while Dr. Morrison looked up from his fake CPR with murder in his eyes. Maya pulled out her phone and activated the speaker, broadcasting the recordings she and Richard had captured earlier in the day. Victoria's voice filled the tent, clear and unmistakable. He should be feeling the effects by now. "In a few hours, this will all be over." The guests gasped in shock as more of the recording played, revealing the full extent of the murder plot. Maya watched as Victoria's carefully constructed facade crumbled before everyone's eyes. "She's lying," Victoria screamed, pointing at Maya. "She's just a jealous servant trying to ruin my wedding." But it was too late. Richard's real security team moved in to secure Victoria and Dr. Morrison, while legitimate paramedics, whom Richard's lawyer had secretly called, rushed to provide actual medical care. The conspiracy that had seemed so perfect just moments before was unraveling completely, and Maya had been the one to pull the thread that brought it all down. The reception tent erupted into chaos as the full scope of Victoria's betrayal became clear to everyone present. The recordings Maya had captured continued to play, revealing every detail of the murder plot in Victoria's own voice. Guests who had come to celebrate a wedding now found themselves witnesses to one of the most shocking crimes many of them had ever encountered. "Get your hands off me," Victoria screamed as Richard's security team restrained her. "This is all lies. That girl is making it up." But her protests fell on deaf ears as her own recorded voice continued to provide damning evidence against her. Dr. Morrison tried to run, but he was quickly surrounded by security personnel. "This is preposterous," he shouted. "I'm a respected physician. You can't treat me like a common criminal." Maya watched as the legitimate paramedics worked frantically to save Richard's life. They had brought real medical equipment and antidotes, guided by the toxicology information Maya had researched earlier. Richard was unconscious but breathing, and the paramedics assured everyone that they had arrived in time to counteract the worst effects of the poison. Federal agents, whom Richard's lawyer had contacted during the ceremony, arrived at the mansion within minutes. They had been waiting nearby, ready to move as soon as Maya gave the signal that the plan was in motion. The agents immediately took Victoria, Dr. Morrison, and Sarah into custody while securing all the evidence Maya and Richard had gathered. Agent Rodriguez, the lead investigator, approached Maya as the chaos began to settle. "Ms. Johnson, we need to get a full statement from you about everything you witnessed and how you uncovered this plot." Maya nodded, still somewhat in shock at everything that had happened. "Is Mr. Whitmore going to be okay? The paramedics say he should make a full recovery thanks to your quick thinking and the treatments you gave him earlier. You literally saved his life." As Victoria was led away in handcuffs, she turned to glare at Maya with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," she hissed. "You're nobody. You're just a servant. You've ruined everything." Maya looked directly into Victoria's eyes and spoke with quiet dignity. "I may be a servant, but I'm not a murderer. And I'm not nobody. I'm the person who stopped you from getting away with killing a good man." The wedding guests slowly began to process what had happened. Many of them approached Maya to thank her for her courage and to express their shock at Victoria's deception. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, hugged Maya tightly with tears in her eyes. "I can't believe I helped her by making that tea," Mrs. Henderson said. "If I had known what she was planning." "You couldn't have known," Maya assured her. "None of us could have imagined someone could be so evil." Over the next several hours, Maya gave detailed statements to the federal agents, walking them through everything she had observed from the moment she first noticed Richard's illness. The recording device in the bridal suite continued to provide evidence, and investigators found additional proof of the conspiracy in Victoria's personal belongings and Dr. Morrison's medical records. The corrupt paramedics Victoria had arranged were arrested before they could leave the area, and the investigation revealed that this wasn't Dr. Morrison's first involvement in suspicious deaths among wealthy patients. Victoria's financial records showed massive debts and failed business ventures that had motivated her desperate plan to marry and murder Richard for his fortune. 3 days later, Maya was surprised to receive a call asking her to come to Richard's private office at his corporate headquarters downtown. When she arrived, she found Richard looking much healthier, though still recovering from his ordeal. He stood up when she entered, and Maya was relieved to see that his color had returned and his eyes were clear and alert. "Maya, please sit down," Richard said warmly. "I owe you more than I can ever repay. You saved my life at great personal risk, and you exposed a conspiracy that would have succeeded if not for your courage and intelligence." Maya felt overwhelmed by his gratitude. "I just did what anyone would have done, sir." "No," Richard said firmly. "Most people would have minded their own business or convinced themselves they were imagining things. You chose to act, even when it meant going up against powerful people who could have destroyed your life." Richard handed Maya a formal letter. "I'd like to offer you a position as head of corporate security for Whitmore Industries. It comes with a substantial salary, full benefits, and the opportunity to lead a team of investigators. Your natural instincts and attention to detail make you perfect for this kind of work." Maya stared at the letter in amazement. The salary offer was more money than she had ever imagined earning, and the position would allow her to use her skills to help protect other people. "I don't know what to say, Mr. Whitmore. This is incredible. But I don't have any formal training in security or investigation." "You'll receive all the training you need," Richard assured her. "What you can't teach is integrity, courage, and the ability to see what others miss. You have all of those qualities in abundance." Maya accepted the position, and over the following months she threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. She completed advanced training in corporate security, criminal investigation, and fraud detection. Her unique perspective and natural abilities made her exceptionally effective at uncovering threats that others might overlook. Victoria Sterling was eventually convicted of attempted murder and conspiracy, receiving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Dr. Morrison was convicted on multiple counts of murder and fraud, related to other suspicious deaths among his wealthy patients. Sarah and the corrupt paramedics also received lengthy prison sentences. The trial became a media sensation, with Maya's story inspiring people around the world. She received thousands of letters from young women, thanking her for showing that courage and integrity could triumph over wealth and power. Several universities offered her scholarships to study criminal justice, and she eventually completed her degree while working for Richard's company. A year after the wedding that never was, Maya stood in her new office overlooking the city skyline. She had just finished solving a complex embezzlement case that had saved Whitmore Industries millions of dollars. Her team respected her leadership, and she had become one of the most sought-after security consultants in the business world. Richard knocked on her door and entered with a smile. "How does it feel to be featured on the cover of Security magazine as their Investigator of the Year?" Maya laughed, holding up the magazine with her photo on the cover. "It feels surreal. A year ago I was cleaning houses, and now I'm supposedly one of the top security experts in the country. You always had these abilities, Maya. You just needed the opportunity to use them." Richard sat down across from her desk. "I have something else to tell you. The FBI has offered you a position as a consultant on their white-collar crime task force. They want your help investigating corruption among wealthy individuals and their associates." Maya considered the offer carefully. The idea of working with federal agents to expose corruption and protect innocent people appealed to her sense of justice. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should follow your heart," Richard said. "Whatever you decide, you'll always have my support and my gratitude. You gave me my life back, and you've shown the world that heroism comes in many forms." As Maya looked out her office window at the city below, she thought about all the people who might need someone to stand up for them against powerful predators. She had discovered that she had a gift for seeing through deception and the courage to act when others wouldn't. Maya Johnson had started as a housekeeper who simply wanted to do her job well. But when faced with a choice between staying silent and risking everything to save an innocent life, she had chosen to be brave. That choice had not only saved Richard Whitmore's life, but had also revealed her own true calling as a protector of those who couldn't protect themselves. The little girl who had once helped her grandmother tend a herb garden had grown into a woman who could detect poison in a teacup and the corruption in people's hearts. And she was just getting started.